Universal Casualty, Super Q, los Miami Dolphins y tú, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Son los Dolphins, nuestros Miami Dolphins, el team número 1 en toda la nación. Y son ellos orgullo de Miami y de todos los latinos en la capital del sol. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Este año no me hablen de los Redskins, no me hablen de los Chargers, ni de los Dallas Cowboys, porque los Dolphins son número 1 y lo demostrarán al llegar al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Nuestra línea está mejor que nunca y nuestra defensiva fue siempre la mejor. Y es por eso que yo no tengo duda que los Miami Dolphins ganarán el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl. Universal Casualty y Super Q, los primeros. Bueno, caballeros, todo el mundo que cante con nosotros. Dame una D, dame una O, dame una L, dame una P, una H, una I, una N, una S, que es lo que tenemos, Miami Dolphins. Me voy para el Super Bowl. 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 Me voy para el Super Bowl.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
There's a team that's in our heart. Football is mighty rough. Winning gets awful tough. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins.
Hello, 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 Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphin Show, sponsored by BetUS, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Katzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
It is a Thursday preview show, a preview of a very, very, very large football game coming up for your Miami Dolphins this Sunday night on national television, on NBC and Peacock, as your Miami Dolphins take on the Los Angeles Chargers of Los Angeles in an attempt to essentially eliminate the Chargers and go some way to securing themselves a playoff berth. According to 538, if the Dolphins win this game on Sunday, they will have a 97% chance of making the playoffs. So, I mean, that's pretty good in the words of Larry David. If the Dolphins can get that big win on Sunday over the Chargers, the question is, can they? Will they? We're going to talk about it today here on the Same Old Dolphin Show. But before we go any further, reminder to you to do this. If you haven't yet, make sure you're following us on Twitter. I'm at Amplified to Rock. He's at Aaron the Brain. That's at Aaron the Brain. The show is at Same Old Dolphins. We invite you to download, rate, review, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, anywhere that you get your podcast. If you're watching live on the Miami Dolphin YouTube channel, I Am a Miami Dolphin Fan Facebook page, or the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel, go ahead and share, like, and subscribe. We appreciate it. Turn on notifications so you never miss out on a live show. We appreciate that very much. And finally, make sure you're visiting DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. It is your one-stop shop for all things Miami Dolphins. And speaking of the Miami Dolphins, they are traveling just a little bit south from where they were last Sunday, because they stayed out in California this week, and now they are taking on the Los Angeles Chargers on Sunday in LA. And it's a big game, and we're going to get into it. But before we do that, they're bringing in some reinforcements. No, Byron Jones has not yet been activated. We still have no idea what's going on with Byron Jones. We don't know when he's coming back, if he's coming back. I don't know. I'm not holding my breath. If you're holding your breath, we'll get the Undertaker over to your place as soon as possible. But they signed offensive tackle Eric Fisher, one of the guys that a lot of people had their eyes on this whole offseason for the Dolphins to bring in to reinforce that offensive line. Of course, this is part reaction to the fact that Austin Jackson, in a corresponding move, has gone back to IR with his ankle injury suffered during the Texans game. But also the fact that Terron Armstead is still on the shelf, and it's unclear at this point whether or not he is going to play on Sunday. We'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But Brain, the Dolphins have brought in Eric Fisher. They've brought in some reinforcements for their offensive line. It has taken them a long time to commit to doing this. And it seems like maybe it took some running down of the offensive line as it had stood when the season began for them to try to bring in these reinforcements. But regardless, they've done it now. And so what is your reaction to the fact that they've gone out and brought in Eric Fisher, a player who, I should say, in the last time we saw him on a football field, was not the same player that he was that earned him this great reputation?
Right. And that's why you're able to add him in the second week of December. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Is that, whenever you add a guy as a street free agent this time of year, you can't have extremely high expectations, because if the guy was just ready to come in and be playing at an all-pro level, he would have been signed. He was not the same player after his injury last year. He was out there in free agency. The whole league, got to take a look at him. Nobody bit on the high price tag. He's been out there for 13 weeks now this season, and nobody signed him. Granted, it sounds like this has been something where the Dolphins and Eric Fisher have been in talks for a couple of weeks, and this was a couple of weeks to get done. But yeah, I don't know that you expect a lot from him, but I don't think you need necessarily a lot from him. The bar right now is be better than Austin Jackson. Be hopefully better than Brandon Shell, or at least on Brandon Shell's level. That's what we need Eric Fisher to be, because Brandon Shell has been serviceable as a right tackle. When Terron Armstead is in at left tackle, you felt good about your offensive line. When Terron Armstead goes out, that's where the problem is. So he needs to be better than Greg Little. He needs to play left tackle better than Brandon Shell. And if he moves to right tackle with Terron Armstead there, then he just needs to be as good or better than Brandon Shell. So you're not asking him to play at an all-pro level. You're just asking him to be serviceable.
So that is the hope, that they can bring in that reinforcement and, just shore things up. I mean, I'll be honest with you, and I said this at the end of in our review show on Sunday after the 49ers game. I was not, I guess, what's the best way to say it? I wasn't impressed with the offensive line, but I guess I wasn't like, I wasn't
the reason they lost
with how bad that offensive line played. They certainly played better in that game against the 49ers than I think anybody would have expected them to play, given the fact that Armstead wasn't in the lineup. And quite frankly, they were better than they were all of last season. So to that extent, I mean, that's a good thing, I guess. But the biggest thing is that you want to keep that offensive line performing as a sort of, I guess, at worst, mediocre offensive line. If you can get at least that sort of baseline of mediocre play from your offensive line, and that's kind of as bad as it gets, then I think you feel okay with Tua's skill being able to make things happen, and having just enough time to do what he needs to do with the ball. I mean, Tua is a guy that gets rid of the ball pretty quickly anyway. So I think that's it's a pretty good situation. They just want to make sure that they stop the bottom from falling out of that offensive line, because if that's something that were to happen, it would be a disaster for this offense. So, so I don't think, like I said, I don't think the offensive line play was something that cost the Dolphins dearly in that game against San Francisco. Obviously, the offensive line breaking down and Nick Bosa being who Nick Bosa is, it certainly impacted the game at moments, but it wasn't like this was a situation where Tua had 49ers defenders breathing down his neck the whole day. He actually had a decent amount of time to pass in that game. And it's something that I expect is going to be key in this game against the Chargers on Sunday as well. So the Dolphins shore up their offensive line there. Let's talk about Terron Armstead, because this does relate to Terron Armstead. He was on Thursday. He was able to get a limited practice in. Apparently the thought is that he is really aiming to try to play in this game on Sunday. Well, the quote that was out there was that he was quoted as saying that at one point he could barely lift his arm because of this injury that he had to his pec. So the hope is that they can put him in a harness and he will be able to generate enough power and enough strength to be able to effectively play the position on Sunday. And my thought is, hearing that, I would almost rather not, as much as, half of Terron Armstead is probably better than Brandon Shell is going to give you, or Eric Fisher is going to give you, having not played football in over a year. I still think I would probably prefer not to put Terron Armstead out there and risk injuring him worse, with the assumption that the belief in the building is that the Miami Dolphins have at least 6 games left in their season, right? The belief here is that at this point, the 8-4 Miami Dolphins have 5 regular season games left and at least 1 playoff game left. And the idea is that you want to have Terron Armstead at as close to full strength as possible for as many of those games as possible. And I would think that having him miss an extra game here in California would be more beneficial than having him go out and injure himself more. I think the risk reward situation is a little bit different there. Brain, what are your thoughts on whether Terron Armstead should give it a go on Sunday?
Well, it comes down to it comes down to two things. Number one, it comes down to, is this an injury that could be aggravated and end up being made worse, or can it slow the progression of the healing? With any kind of muscle strain, I would think that the answer to that is yes. So I would think that this is an injury that could be aggravated. So if they feel like there's a high likelihood or even a decent likelihood that this could make the injury worse, it really comes down to the answer to this question. Is this a must-win game?
Well, you're asking me if this is a must-win game?
I know what I think. Do you think this is a must-win game?
I believe that this is absolutely a must-win game for the Miami Dolphins.
Then he has to play. If this is a must-win game, then you need him to play. Now, personally, I don't think this is a must-win game because of what you just said. Like, if the Dolphins lose this game and then they lose to Buffalo, I still like where the Dolphins sit as far as their chances to make the playoffs. And if you believe that a healthy Dolphins team can beat anybody in the AFC, then you get into the playoffs and then you take your shot. Obviously, you want to win the division. This game is huge for your odds of winning the division. Not as big as next week's game, but it is huge. And if you win this week's game, it really sets next week's game up as being potentially for the division. Because if you win this week and you win next week against Buffalo, then you have a 1-game lead with the season series in hand against Buffalo and 3 games that you feel good about that you could win 2 out of 3 to win the division.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, yeah, it's a huge game, but it's not a must-win game. Because if the Dolphins lose this game, I still feel like the Dolphins are in good shape to make the playoffs. So because of that, the long-term goal is what? It's to make it to the Super Bowl. Well, if Terron Armstead plays in this game and gets hurt and then you lose him for a month, that's going to hurt a lot more than losing this football game. So if that's the case, I would err on the side of caution and not play Terron Armstead. I would also say, look, all things that went wrong in that San Francisco game, the offensive line was not the reason they lost the football game. Obviously, you want your full complement of offensive linemen. Obviously, you want Terron Armstead in there. You're going up against Khalil Mack. But you went up against Nick Bosa last week, and it was all there for you. Nick Bosa made his impact in the game, as I'm sure Khalil Mack will make his impact in the game, especially if Terron Armstead doesn't play.
If he plays, I don't know if he's going to play. Is he playing in this game?
Khalil Mack?
Or I'm thinking of the other guy.
Joey Bosa doesn't look like he's going to play, which is huge because obviously if Terron Armstead doesn't play and they have Khalil Mack on one side and Joey, but that's kind of the doomsday scenario. And so you're getting a little bit of a break there. So like you can figure this out. If you can't beat a 500 team in December with a terrible defense, because of all the injuries, then you don't deserve to win the division. You don't deserve to be considered a contender with or without Terron Armstead. This should be a game that you can win without Terron Armstead if you had to.
Right.
That said, look, if he is adamant about playing and the doctors say he looks good and he's like 70 to 80% and they're just cautious with him. And then, at some point you got to let guys go. You want to protect guys from themselves to a certain extent. But when you get into December football games, you get into big football games, these close calls, sometimes you got to, if a player's going to go the extreme to do everything it takes to get out on the field, sometimes you got to let him play. I would err on the side of caution, though. If you feel like there's a good chance that he can aggravate that injury, I would hold him out.
Yeah. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. It's we're back to the doctor's decision as to what the Dolphins should do in this situation, which, depending on who you ask, is a loaded situation. But we'll see. We'll see if Terron Armstead plays. Either way, it's going to, like you said, I don't think that Terron Armstead playing or not playing is going to be the difference in this game. Let's see. This is a quote from Cap for Life on YouTube, the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. By the way, share, like, and subscribe, everybody. Always fun to join us live because you can get your comment on the show. But as Cap for Life says, so we're really doing the Armstead is the main key to everything show tonight. Scratch my head. Really, Brain? How about we stop with the O-line excuse for 3 years in a row? Finally, let the QB win a statement game. And that is a great question because you know what? It's a great point that Cap brings up because this is a tweet that I sent out I sent out a tweet thread the other day talking about Tua Tagovailoa's performance in December and January road games. Now, knowing that this is ideally it's a pretty small sample size when all is said and done. But let me read this thread to you and we'll sort of discuss. Sound good, Brain?
Sounds good.
All right, here we go. And I think that I'll dedicate this to Cap for Life, our good buddy on YouTube. So I've been thinking a lot. This is the tweet thread here. I've been thinking about Tua's performances on the road in December and January versus the rest of his career. Obviously, the December and January road games are a significantly smaller sample size, but it's fair to say that as of now, his numbers in these games skew a bit worse than the rest. Tua in December and January road games, total. He's 107 of 177. That's a 60.4% completion percentage for 1,153 yards, 5 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, a 77.2 combined rating. He has a 2-3 record in those games. Okay, so it's only 5 games, which is a very small sample size for the NFL. But those 2 wins are wins on Monday Night Football over a COVID-depleted New Orleans Saints team with Ian Book at quarterback, and the Las Vegas Raiders game when Tua was pulled for Ryan Fitzpatrick, who led the Dolphins on the comeback for the victory. Tua, in all other games in his career, and this excludes his debut where he came in at the end of the game against the Jets and threw 2 passes, the home game against Buffalo last season where he exited on the first drive of the game, and then this also excludes the game at Cincinnati this year where he was injured in the first half. So in all of the rest of the games in his career, he's 547 for 798. That's 68.5% for 6,041 yards, 43 touchdowns, only 12 interceptions, a 101.4 rating, and he is 20-5 in those games. So you can see the difference already. Okay. So on average, those numbers look something like 21 out of, this is his December, January games on the road, 21 of 35 for 231, 1 touchdown per game, about 1.5 interceptions per game. And then the rest of his career, 22 out of 32, 241, 1.7 touchdowns and a 0.5 interception per game. So the stats are similar, but they definitely skew a little worse in that 5-game sample size on the road in December and January. So obviously, if you look at the big picture, Tua's counting stats are obviously a bit stunted over the course of his career by the offenses he played in and the environment surrounding him in 2020 and 2021. And he's showing growth year over year in general. So if you look at his individual season splits in 2020, he had a 64.14% completion percentage, 1,800 yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 87.1 rating. In 21, his completion percentage goes up to 67.78, 2,600 yards, 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, a 90.1 rating. And this season, 2,859 yards. So he's passed his total from last year already. 21 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, and his passer rating is 112. So again, his numbers year over year are improving. So this is a quarterback, Tua, who has a reputation for raising his play in second halves and especially fourth quarters of games. Some would say he has the clutch gene. The question, of course, is when will he show that clutch gene and come up big on the road in December or January when it's all on the line? That is the question. Based on his season-long splits, the increase in talent surrounding him, and the general improvement of morale and faith in him, there's reason to believe this is the year he does. Unless, of course, it isn't. So, Brain, that leads us to what Cap mentioned. When is Tua going to come up big in December or January and win a huge game on the road for the Dolphins?
Well, it's got to be this year, right?
If there was ever an opportunity for it,
be this week, right?
I mean, if there was ever an opportunity for it, I mean, this is it, right? If he doesn't come out and absolutely light up the Chargers here, you've really got to start to ask questions, don't you?
Yeah. So let me first address, I love your passion. I think you misinterpreted what I said. I don't blame the offensive line. In fact, I agree with you. I think this is a game that the Dolphins should be able to win, even if Terron Armstead doesn't play and you have a ragtag offensive line in front of Tua. This is a game against a bad defense where Tua should perform much, much better. You had wide receivers running wide open against the San Francisco 49ers. You should have wide receivers running wide open against against the Los Angeles Chargers. Tua needs to be better. Bottom line, if Tua's better, they should win this football game. And it's not necessarily going to put everything to rest, because people like to move the goalposts, and people will say, okay, well, the Chargers were a banged up team. They were a terrible defense. And they'll say, okay, what does he do next week against Buffalo? If he loses against Buffalo, what does he do down the stretch in the big games against the Patriots and the Jets? And if he beats the Patriots and the Jets on the road, they're going to say, well, what does he do in the playoffs? And that's just how it is. I mean, that's going to happen. Short of Tua going out and lighting up the Chargers and lighting up the Bills and playing lights out the rest of the way and winning the MVP and then taking the Dolphins all the way to the Super Bowl, there are still going to be people that doubt Tua. So get over that. That's going to happen. Tua could win the MVP award. The Dolphins could lose in the AFC title game, and people will still say that Tua isn't good enough to win the Dolphins a Super Bowl. So get ready for that.
Tua could win the Dolphins a Super Bowl, and there'd be people that say he's not good enough to win the Dolphins a Super Bowl.
Right. Well, yeah, they'll say, oh, they won because they brought in Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill, and they put all the weapons around him. And anyway, yeah. So there are always going to be people that discredit Tua. But the fact is, Tua's got to play better, and this is the opportunity. I don't care what he did last 2 years, that he lost to 3 teams that were better than us, that he played 3 really good defenses with an offense that made no sense, throwing the ball to Devontae Parker. I don't care that his numbers sucked the last 2 years. I care that he was disappointing last week, and he needs to be better than that. And if he's better than that, the Dolphins should win the game. Now, I want to bring up another point here because it was mentioned here in the comments, and this was a great comment, and this has been a big talking point over the last week, and I feel kind of passionate about, and I think I take the contrarian stance on it, but here it is. Garrett Grimes, all that being said, shouldn't they run the ball more in December and January?
Well, before you give your take on this, I will say this. For this game against the Chargers, absolutely. The Los Angeles Chargers are 30th in the league in defensive DVOA against the rush. They are a terrible run defense. And what we saw when the Dolphins went out against the team that was number 31 in the league in rushing DVOA, that's the Cleveland Browns. The Dolphins had a very well-balanced attack, rushing the ball and passing the ball. And it was by far the best game the Dolphins have played all season, all around. So my thought is they should absolutely follow that up and do that again and really mix it up this week in particular against the Chargers, because they're doing themselves a disservice, especially because the Chargers' biggest weakness as a defensive football team is their run defense. They've got a decent secondary. I mean, and granted, I know Mike McDaniel believes that he would put his quarterback and his receivers up against any defense in the league and just sling it all over the yard. I get that. But against this team, let's incorporate that Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson 1-2 punch out of the backfield and run the ball down these guys' throats, because you can, and you should be able to, even with Brandon Shell and, whoever else is out there on the offensive line for the Dolphins, Greg Little at left tackle, whatever it is.
So this has been a talking point all week, really going back to not even discussing about the Chargers, really just looking back at the San Francisco game. And I touched on it in the show that we did after the San Francisco game on Sunday night. And I think there was way too much made out of the run-pass split in the last game. Because if Tua plays better in that last game, they run the ball more. But you're going up against a team last week in San Francisco that was not just the number one pass defense, they were also the number one rush defense. So all things being equal, do you trust your quarterback, who you're trying to say is like an MVP candidate, and you brought in do you trust your quarterback and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, which is basically what your offense is built around? Or do you trust Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson and an offensive line that has been maligned for not being able to open up holes against a good run defense? And you're not going to consistently run on first down against a really good run defense. So you pass on first down. And so when Tua is consistently missing on first down and putting yourself in second long, and then you're going on third and long, it snowballs on you. And should they have, maybe, on third and short, run the football, and maybe there's a little bit more balance, maybe. But if you look at that game last week, I don't know that aside from that third and short, that there's a single time that you would look at that game and say, well, the Dolphins should have run the ball on that play. I mean, we're sitting here talking about one of the biggest things that came out of that game was, well, the wide receivers were open and Tua just missed them. So the play calling wasn't the issue. If Tua is hitting those guys, nobody's complaining that we should be running the football. Now, all that said, you're right. We're playing the Chargers. The Chargers do not have the number one run defense. So we should be able to lean on the running game a little bit more. We don't need to be overly aggressive and overly reliant on Tua, especially if Terron Armstead doesn't play. You want to be able to have some balance to keep the edge rushers honest a little bit. It also is going to help if you're playing from ahead in this game and not behind by 2 scores the entire second half, like they were basically the entire fourth quarter against the San Francisco 49ers. So start fast, have some balance, but at the end of the day, I don't care if they run the ball 12 times. If Tua plays really well and they put up a bunch of points, they should win this game. We do need to talk about the other side of the ball at some point, though.
We're absolutely going to talk about the defense here. But before we move away from the offense, can we shout out Tua? I need to get your thoughts on this. The player who leads all other NFL players in fan voting for the NFL Pro Bowl is QB1 Tua Tagovailoa. Brain, your reaction.
Well, this is why the fans shouldn't be voting on the Pro Bowl.
So am I to take it that you do not care about Tua leading the fan vote?
I don't know why. I mean that means he's likable. That's cool, I guess. I don't care about Pro Bowl voting. I mean, that says it all. Like, Tua's having a great year. He just came off of his worst game of the season, and we're talking about how he's leading the NFL in Pro Bowl voting. Like, is there anybody that would look at this right now and say, Yeah, Tua's having a better year than Patrick Mahomes. Tua's better than Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, I'm not going to say that.
Is he having a better? Well, it doesn't matter about Jalen Hurts because he's in the other conference, so it doesn't matter there. But I would vote for Patrick Mahomes over Tua. I don't think that should, get me a bunch of hate on Twitter, but it probably will.
Yeah. So anyway, congratulations to Tua. That's
far.
I mean, right now, that's great. He's ahead of Justin Jefferson in Pro Bowl voting, so that's great. The fans are into him. So we're going to talk about the defense here in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody that you need to go to trueclassic.com and get yourself some t-shirts. I got a blue True Classic tee on right now underneath my flannel here that I'm rocking this evening. And that's one of the things that I really like about the True Classic t-shirts is that they can be sort of accessorized with anything. They're really great t-shirts, solid colors. You can mix them up with your jeans. You can dress them down with sweatpants. You can dress them up with chinos or even nicer pants than that if you want to. They actually sell some of those as well. You get sweatpants, chinos, jeans over there at trueclassic.com. Really great products over there. Great shirts. I love them. I've loved them since before they were a sponsor here. So I encourage you, if you haven't done so yet, for any guy in your life that you think would like them, trueclassic.com. Use the promo code Dolphins Talk. You're going to save 25% off of your order. And they've got some good specials out there right now for the holidays, so you can get that extra discount on top of it. trueclassic.com, promo code Dolphins Talk. And of course, you also want to go over to manscaped.com and hit that promo code Dolphins Talk because you can get 20% off of the best men's below the belt grooming equipment out there. So the Lawnmower 4.0, you can get yourself. They've got a regular razor as well. You can get the crop exfoliator, the crop reviver. You can get the ball toner, the ball deodorant. You can get the regular deodorant, the body wash, the shampoo. Incredible products over there at manscaped.com. So, and the lip gloss is money. I use the lip gloss all the time. So head over there, manscaped.com. Even whether you're buying a lot or you're buying a little, use the promo code Dolphins Talk and save 20% off your order. And Manscaped is going to ship to you for free no matter where you are in the world. So jump on it, manscaped.com, promo code Dolphins Talk, all one word. So, all right, let's talk about what I think is the most important aspect of this game, Brain, because I think, frankly, if you're a Miami Dolphin fan, and even if you're not a Miami Dolphin fan, I think everybody kind of expects this offense to bounce back in this game. If they don't bounce back, there's a problem. But I think we can all expect this Dolphins offense to bounce back and to probably light it up on Sunday against this Chargers defense. But where it really matters, what I think is going to be the matchup that's going to make the difference in this game, similar to how it was last week against the 49ers, is going to be whether or not this Miami Dolphins defense can stop the Chargers offense. This is a Chargers offense that is shaping up to be as close to full strength as they've been at any point this season. It sounds like Mike Williams is going to be good to go for this game. He's a full participant in practice on Thursday, so it would take some sort of setback, I imagine, for him to not play on Sunday night. Keenan Allen is obviously back, and we saw him in action last week against the Raiders. Austin Eckler is just a force, whether he's running the ball or catching passes out of the backfield. He's dangerous. They also have Gerald Everett, who's been a very effective pass catching tight end. And they've got Josh Palmer, who is another wide receiver who has stepped up at times in the absence of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So this is a team with weapons. They also have Justin Herbert, who is a quarterback. The problem with this Chargers team is their offensive line. The offensive line is a weakness for this team, and they're going to probably be without center Corey Linsley, who is still in the concussion protocol. So they're going to be weakened on that offensive line. This is going to be the test. This is where, Brain, and tell me if you agree with me or not here, but this is where that addition of Bradley Chubb is going to be vital. This Miami Dolphins defensive front four has to get home and has to be able to get home without bringing that constant pressure, because otherwise you're going to have Herbert dumping the ball off to Eckler and Eckler getting 175 yards receiving in this game just from dump offs from Herbert all day if the Dolphins are trying to bring the blitz and fail to get home. They've got to be able to get home with just their front four against this offensive line, Bryn.
Completely agree. I think that when the Dolphins made the trade to bring in Bradley Chubb, the whole idea of the trade was we don't have the pieces in our secondary to consistently bring the house and put our corners on an island. We need to be a little bit more conservative defensively, so we need to be able to rely on our front four to bring pressure. That's why you get Bradley Chubb. You're playing a team with a beat-up offensive line. You've got Bradley Chubb, who's supposed to be a Pro Bowl caliber player. You've got Christian Wilkins, who's playing at a Pro Bowl level. You've got Jalen Phillips, who you drafted and are playing him to be at a Pro Bowl level. You got Melvin Ingram to be your depth piece, your rotational piece to play at a really high level for like 20 to 30 snaps a game. You've got, Raekwon Davis in the middle. You've got Zach Sealer wreaking havoc in the middle. If these guys cannot win their matchups against this defensive line, if the defense cannot function and hold the Chargers in check, then you have wasted a lot of money in draft picks to bring in Bradley Chubb. Because this is why you do it, so that you can have a really good defense, so that you can stop an offense like this that doesn't have a good offensive line and not have to blitz. Because if you have to keep on blitzing, then why did you even bring Bradley Chubb? Why did you even go out there and trade a first-round pick for him? Not to mention what else they traded. Not to mention the big contract. If Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer, Melvin Ingram, Andrew Van Ginkel can't put their stamp on this game, and the Dolphins defense gives up 30 points, even if they win the game, which at the end of the day, if they win the game, I'm going to be happy because it's a big win. But even if they win the game, I'm going to have my concerns about this defense and about what the ceiling of this team is. Because for the ceiling of this team to be legitimate Super Bowl contenders, like, you got to be able to contain the you at least slow down the Chargers offense. You shouldn't be giving up. You shouldn't be, letting the Chargers go up and down the field at will. Now, I get the feeling that what we're going to see a lot of is a lot of plain zone coverage and a lot of kind of bend but not break, and that's fine as long as when they get into the red zone, you stop them. But if we're giving up 30 points in this game, I'm going to be very concerned.
Yeah. And I mean, that's certainly a possibility. I wonder if we're going to see something out of Justin Herbert that we have not seen a lot out of him this year, which is him running the ball. It is something that he is capable of doing. And we've seen that the Dolphins are vulnerable to that. So I'm wondering if that isn't something that isn't going to rear its ugly head in this game as well, as the Dolphins try to commit to shutting down those receivers. If we're going to see Justin Herbert do some damage with his legs, that is something that I am worried about. And I think we're going to need to keep an eye on in this game. I'm not saying that we need to be spying Justin Herbert or anything like that, but it's just something to be aware of. This is a quarterback who can do some damage with his legs. And if you forget about that, that is something that could jump up and bite you at some point in this game. Listen, we have to acknowledge this because it is a Dolphins-Chargers matchup. It is Tua versus Herbert, right? I think this is one of the more overrated talking points in the world. It's an internet talking point. It's only a talking point because there are people who, think the Dolphins have chosen the wrong guy, and Tua has been so polarizing for some reason. That's the only reason it's a talking point. The fact of the matter is Tua has been the better quarterback this season, and it hasn't even been particularly close. But again, it comes back to the idea that because Justin Herbert has greater physical gifts, people tend to be a little bit kinder to him. They tend to be less critical of him. He kind of has more margin for error because his physical gifts are what they are. Where Tua has to be more precise and has less margin for error because he doesn't have those same kind of physical tools that Herbert has. But quite frankly, at the end of the day, I don't really care about the debate because the fact of the matter is the quarterbacks are where they are and the situation is what it is. And, why is there's no point in talking about it anymore. People think that, one guy is better than the other. And I just think it's a useless debate. When it comes down to it, this year, Tua is the better quarterback on the field. Herbert may have been the better quarterback on the field last year, but the fact of the matter is the Dolphins are better with Tua than the Chargers are with Herbert. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't dislike the debate because I think this is a debate. It's a bar debate. This is you have your buddies. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and Tua Tagovailoa are forever going to be linked. Jalen Hurts will get thrown into that conversation too. Those quarterbacks who came out that same year, they're going to be forever linked, just like every quarterback class is forever linked. But the funny thing about it is that if you would asked, 100 people going into this season, probably 95% of them, 95 out of 100 probably would have said Justin Herbert is obviously the better quarterback. And if you asked 100 people right now, probably 80% of them would probably say that Tua is the better quarterback. And if the Chargers win this game, you'll probably get about a 50-50 split on that. But if the Dolphins go out and win the Super Bowl, then you'll probably get about 80% say that Tua is better again. And then next season, if Justin Herbert has a bounce back year and plays at an MVP level, then people will be saying that Justin Herbert, it's going to go on and on and on. Joe Burrow is going to be in that conversation too at some point. I mean, he should be in the guy. Joe Burrow, honestly, I would take Joe Burrow over both of them. So, and that remains to be seen. Like, this argument is going to rage on for the rest of their careers. And then at the end of it, when all is said and done, there is either going to be, an obvious resolution that like this player was obviously the best of these three, or it's going to rage on, for the end of time to their Hall of Fame inductions. And that's just a fun thing about being a sports
fan. Their what?
If it goes on forever, it would be for their Hall of Fame inductions.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Either way, we're going to see them match up. This is being pitted as a battle of Herbert versus Tua, but it really,
of course it is. Like, I mean, that's what all anybody cares about casually. I mean, when you're billing a game, you're not going to bill it as Tua versus the vaunted Chargers defense.
Of course. Look at the cover photo for this video on YouTube. Look at it on dolphinstock.com. The cover photo it's the Same Old Dolphin Show. And here's Tua and here's Herbert. It is what it is.
It's what, that's what puts butts in seats, quarterbacks.
That's the draw, baby. This is Hogan versus Andre at Madison Square Garden. It's the immovable force versus the irresistible force versus the immovable object. Something like that.
Yeah.
Regardless, it's going to be exciting. We had a question that came in from Facebook, and I want to share it. It comes from Samuel Corral, who says, what do you guys think about Hill passing Mark Clayton's record for yards in a single season by the Miami Dolphins, which Hill should break that record this week. I think he needs something like 11 yards or something to become the Miami Dolphins single season receiving yards leader.
I think the fact that he's doing it in week 13 is really impressive.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it's more of a passing league now. So all of the passing and receiving stats are blown a little bit out of proportion, even though Marino is kind of the guy who started that. So Clayton was a beneficiary of that. The fact that they're doing it and that he's going to break the record in 13 games is amazing. I mean, this is a guy that has a legitimate shot at breaking the all-time single season.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's awesome. Tyreek Hill is the best Miami Dolphins football player since Dan Marino.
So, Brain, through 12 games, through 12 games, Tyreek Hill has 1,379 receiving yards. Okay. Calvin Johnson in 2012 had 1,964 receiving yards. Okay. And that was in 12 games or in 16 games in 2012, right? He had almost 2,000 yards, 1,964.
Unreal.
So Tyreek Hill would need, basically about 200 yards per game over the next 4 games to beat that record in 16 games. It's certainly reasonable to think that he could beat it in 17 games, don't you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's probably not going to, and it's just amazing that Megatron put up those numbers in 16 games. I mean, what a monster.
It's ridiculous. I mean, averaging 120, he averaged 122 receiving yards per game on 7.6 receptions per game. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, what a monster.
Yeah. That guy was just a beast, but Tyreek Hill's right in that conversation. He's pretty awesome. Another thing before we make our predictions that somebody mentioned here on, in the chat, I believe it was Douglas Potter from YouTube.
That was a good point.
He has let's see. He says, bottom line, if they lose this game, it will most likely be on the horrible special teams play, which doesn't get criticized enough besides Jason Sanders, and a defense that cannot be counted on. So let's talk about special teams, because the Dolphins have largely been pretty underwhelming on special teams, particularly in kick coverage. And obviously, I mean, it's been well documented, the issues with Jason Sanders this season.
Yeah, it's 3 phases of the game. And the bigger the game, the more of a magnifying glass that's going to be on each phase. Like, the offense could be fine. The defense could be fine. You could totally lose a game on special teams.
Yes.
We've bemoaned Jason Sanders missing some kicks this year. But by and large, it hasn't cost the Dolphins a game yet. And granted, the last couple of weeks, we've seen signs that Jason Sanders looks to be fine. Like, he's back to normal, and it's been really not a non-issue. Kick coverage has been a little bit more of an issue, and that's something that could absolutely cost you a game if you give up a big return like that. That's a huge swing of momentum that you could absolutely lose a game like that. But you could always lose a game in the kicking game. Look, is anybody going to be surprised, given the number of one-score games that both of these teams have played? Is anybody going to be surprised if this game comes down to a field goal?
Would anybody be surprised if a game between the Dolphins and Chargers came down to a field goal?
Oh, Jesus.
Do we need to talk about this?
Well, are you talking about the one that Younghoe Koo missed in the season opener a few years back?
Yeah, that's the kick I'm talking about. That's the Dolphins Chargers kick that I'm talking about. Yeah.
The Adam Gase debut.
Oh man. Listen, these games more often than I would like them to come down to kicks, but I mean, it hasn't really yet this season for the Dolphins in terms of Jason Sanders. So I'm at a point where my heart would prefer if it didn't come down to that. Quite frankly, I would prefer if the Dolphins won this game by a couple of scores. Which, if the Dolphins win this game by a couple of scores, probably means that the Dolphins offense was once again firing on cylinders and that the defense did enough to slow down this high octane Chargers offense. And quite frankly, if you can hold this Chargers offense to, let's say, 20 points or fewer, then that's a pretty good accomplishment for this defense against this team.
Oh, I mean, look, if you hold the Chargers to 20 points, you're winning this football game. Against that
100%.
defense you're not losing this game if you hold the Chargers to 20. If the Dolphins defense holds the Chargers to 20 points, they absolutely did their job. And that's a hell of a job, honestly, because this is not a bad Chargers offense.
No.
But you hold them to
Chargers
20
offense.
points. Like, I think this game is a race to 30. Now this could be a shootout. So you could have a game where both teams get to 30. But to me, hold the Chargers under 30 points and you should win this football game.
Yes, that is absolutely what should happen. I'm looking here at I'm trying to get the over-under on this game. Let's see. 52.5 is the over-under on this game on our
overall
through our friends Bet US. I'm smashing the over.
Yeah, overall, and mostly because I don't trust the Dolphins defense. That's the biggest thing. Is like, if I trusted the Dolphins defense, I would stay away. If I thought the Dolphins had an elite defense, I could see the Dolphins winning this game 31-17 or something. But before we get into our predictions, I'll say I don't trust the Dolphins defense. Yeah,
I don't trust them either, but I will. And to the point that I will tell you that I do have a fantasy league where I am in the playoffs, and I am starting Josh Palmer in this playoff league. Although I may change my mind when Mike Williams is officially active for this game. But as of now, Josh Palmer is in my starting lineup in this league. It's the Go Time Dolphins League. Shout out Go Time Dolphins. In that fantasy league, I have Josh Palmer as my one of my starting receivers. He's in a flex spot at the moment.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
How do you think, because we didn't really talk about, we talked a lot about the Dolphins defensive line and how they should win their matchup against the Chargers offensive line, but we didn't really spend a lot of time talking about the Chargers weapons. And granted, we're running kind of long, so we're probably not going to spend a lot of time on it. But what do you think the Dolphins do defensively against those weapons, against Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and then against Austin Eckler? I mean, my thought is on Eckler, there's only so much that you can do. He's going to end up getting
he's going to get what he gets.
He's going to end up in matchups where he's lined up against linebackers, but I think you're going to see a lot of zone coverage. And I think what you're going to see is, here's my biggest question. Do you shadow one of these receivers with X and then bracket the other one? And if you do, who are you shadowing? I think you shadow Mike Williams because he's not like a super explosive wide receiver. He's a big bodied wide receiver that can go up and get the ball. But that's also what Xavier Howard is really great at. And so instead of allowing Mike Williams to have one-on-one matchups against potentially Kader Kohou or against even double teams, I say, hey, X, you take Mike Williams out of this game, and then you bracket Keenan Allen, who largely will beat you underneath. No, you go the opposite way.
Yes, I go the opposite way. I have Xavier Howard follow Keenan Allen all over the place and try to keep him in check. And then you've got Kader Kohou dealing with Mike Williams. You've got Javon Holland with help over the top where needed. And that's how you're going to take care of shutting down Mike Williams as best you can. Keenan Allen is going to have himself a field day if he's going up one-on-one against Kader Kohou all day. I just don't trust, as well as Kader Kohou has played, I don't trust Kader Kohou to be able to shut down Keenan Allen, even with his short routes underneath. That guy is just an elite route runner. And I mean, this is where you really miss Byron Jones, because this is a game where if Byron Jones was here, Byron Jones would take care of Keenan Allen, and you'd have X over there with Mike Williams, and it'd be no problem. But not having Byron Jones, I think you got to put X with Keenan Allen and hope that he could slow him down, and then hope that Kader Kohu and some combination of, that those guys in that secondary are going to be able to slow down Mike Williams and prevent him from, putting together a couple of those big catches, which he is, that big down the field threat for them. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, I get it. I've had the debate in my head, like, the last few days, as it's looked like Mike Williams is going to play, is like, how do you line up against it? Like, cause that's really the matchup. Like, Eckler is a matchup problem, but aside from Eckler, the other matchup is their wide receivers against our beat up secondary. And
yep.
How do you counteract that? So I think it is going to be interesting to see how the Dolphins do. I think the Dolphins are going to play a lot of zone. So it's not going to be a lot of man up on this guy. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a fascinating matchup.
Yes, I agree with that. I think it is going to be an interesting one for sure. Douglas Potter on YouTube is asking if we're going to do a pulse check. We're not going to do a pulse check on this episode of the show, but I'll tell you where there is going to be a pulse check. There's going to be a pulse check on Sunday when I am doing the live watch along of this game here on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel with Mike Oliva.
You're going to do one every quarter?
What's that?
You going to do one every quarter?
Yeah, we're going to do a couple of them several times throughout the night. We'll be watching the game live, and we'll be doing our pulse check. We'll certainly do one before the game. We'll maybe do one at halftime. We're going to do a few of them. We're going to have a good time. So if you didn't tune in for any of the watch alongs we've done before, we did one last season for the Monday night game against the Saints. We did one earlier this year. Me and Mike were together at Mike's house for the game against the Bengals. We will be doing this remotely this weekend, but there is a possibility that we will be together in the same room again for a watch along if the Dolphins come away with a big win on Sunday against the Chargers. I will not get into any more details than that because I don't want to jinx anything, and I'm a little bit, it's weird. It's weird that, knowing my personality, that on top of all of it, I'm somehow superstitious, but it is what it is. So I'm not going to say any more than that, but I hope you'll join us for the live watch along on Sunday as the Dolphins take on the Chargers. Brain, I'm like getting ready to wrap the show up. It's prediction time. We got to make some predictions for this game on Sunday. I don't know why I started singing, but here we are.
I don't know either, but I love it.
You feel it? You're feeling it?
Yeah, you were singing. We're excited. This is what big time December football is all about. This is what it makes you do.
That's right, baby. Big time December football makes you sing on the podcast.
We're going to sing and make predictions. We're getting excited.
Prediction time, baby.
Talk about the Dolphins.
All right. I would like you to sing your prediction for this game, Brain.
I think the Dolphins are going to move the ball well. I think Tua is going to have things clicking. I think Tyreek is going to break Mark Clayton's record. And I think the Dolphins are going to put up 34 points. But the defense, I'm worried about the defense. Ooh, child, this defense makes me nervous. I think the Dolphins go up big, but the Chargers make it interesting late. But we get that Justin Herbert interception in crunch time, and the Dolphins are going to win 34-27.
There's some big preacher energy there.
We're soulful. The Catskers are soulful.
That was very soulful. I was feeling that. Your wife is in the comments. She was feeling it. It's good. We love it. Do I need to sing my prediction, or do I can just talk, right?
I think the fans, the listeners have been through enough.
So you're saying don't sing anymore?
I'm saying you do what you want to do. You do
Okay.
what you want to do.
Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say this Dolphins offense is going to light up the Los Angeles Chargers. And I think not only are we getting a 30 burger, I don't even think we're going to settle for a 40 burger.
Woo!
Your Miami Dolphins are putting up 51 points on the LA Chargers on Sunday. 51 points on Sunday. And your Miami Dolphins are going to get that big win because there's going to be, you've heard of, you know what we're going to have? We're going to have some pick six energy in this game. And your Miami Dolphins are getting a 51-31 victory over the Los Angeles Chargers. So it's going to be a big win, but Aaron's still going to be pissed off because the team will have still given up 31 points. So we're going to get that big win. That's right, baby. 51 points on the road.
I thought you were going to
big Tua road performance in December.
I thought you were going to go Sammy Hagar and drop a 55.
I don't think we're going to get that far. 55, yeah. All right. Oh, taking it back to my my punk rock days with that one. Yeah. No, we're going to have some fun. Dolphins offense is going to explode. So I'm officially going to put up a 51-31 score. But this is why you got to bet the over on Sunday. Okay, take the over. It's going to be good. Dolphins are going to get the win. And then that game the following week on Saturday night on national television, once again, the Miami Dolphins are going to go into a battle in Orchard Park for an opportunity to go first place in the AFC East. So, I mean, this is, worst case scenario going into that game. If the Dolphins win their game, worst case scenario is they're going in with a chance to be in first place in the AFC East the following week. But they first have to get by the Chargers. If they don't win this game, all hell's going to break loose. And it's going to be panic stations. So that's all I have to say about that. Brian, any parting words for the people? Preferably spoken words?
Yeah. I think that this is a big one. Look, you win this game and you're no longer really you're not wrapping up a playoff berth, but you win this game and you feel like you're making the playoffs.
And you essentially eliminate the Chargers.
You basically eliminate the Chargers and you basically put yourself you put yourself in a position where you could lose every game except for the Patriots game and be guaranteed a spot in the playoffs. Frankly, you probably don't even need to win the Patriots game. As long as you win one game at that point, you probably are going to make the playoffs if you win this game. So you win this game, and I think we can all take a deep breath and feel really good that the Dolphins are going to be a playoff team. And then you set your sights a lot higher, as they should be set. I like I've said for weeks since they made the Bradley Chubb move. I think when you make that move, you're telling your team, you're telling your fan base, you're telling the country, the world, that you are going for it all. You are going for the Super Bowl. And we'll get more into this, after this week and as we come down the home stretch and we get towards playoff football. But, this team's got a window and it starts this year. So, look, the Bills just got some bad news in Von Miller being injured and out for the rest of the year. The time is now. It starts this Sunday. Just win, baby.
Wow. I thought we were going to have to break out the John Cena music.
Enough
You can't
with
see me. The time is now. No, I'm not asking you to sing it. Wait, that would be ridiculous. Let's not get ridiculous here. Yeah, big game. Big game. Let's go ahead and get this win. And then if you get this win, things start to look, I mean, obviously that game against Buffalo becomes huge, but you know, things are good. Things are good if you win this game. If you don't win this game, the opposite is true. But let's not worry about that. So that is going to wrap up this episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show. Make sure you're following us at Amplified to Rock, at Aaron the Brain, at Same Old Dolphins. Download, rate, review, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. Visit dolphinstalk.com each and every day. Subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button and share it with your friends. Tell everybody what's going on. Thank you, as always, for listening. Thank you, as always, for watching. We appreciate you. We will see you live on the watch along on Sunday night as the Dolphins take on the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. But until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And as always, go Dolphins!
Find me another Dolphins podcast with better singing than this one. I dare you.